my name's Mary Furtado. I'm the Catawba County manager. What I tell people is, listen, I'm from somewhere else, and I've chosen to be here.
Exactly.
Because you all had it right, and so you're stuck with me. And, you mentioned the fact that local government doesn't get a ton of credit. When it's running well, you don't even know that it's there. And by design, right? Like, you turn on the tap and water comes out. I'm a gypsy. But what I would say is I have not been able to roll on from Catawba County. So what's that say? Right? I mean, there's something about this place that captured me.
What's up, guys? Lift and Love. Lift and Love here. Where did you pull this question from? Lift Love, crochet, we out.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Lifting Love podcast. You are awesome. Before we get started, shout out to Lake Hickory Pub and Marina for allowing us to film our episodes here where Lake and Life meet. Make sure you check them out. Their social media is going to be in the description below, so make sure you go check it out. Support local, an amazing place in this community. But today we got an amazing guest. She is the county manager for Catawba County. It is Mary Furtado. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir, you got it.
Let's go. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here.
I seriously appreciate you taking your time in your busy schedule. We were just joking about that before, phone ringing off the hook. So for people who might not know you, who are you and what do you do?
All right, so my name's Mary Furtado. I'm the Catawba County manager, which means I oversee county government here in Catawba County, 1,230 employees, $338 million budget, and everything that comes with that. I interface with the county commissioners, and we're working to make Catawba County a great place to live and work and raise a family.
And I'm a perfect example. I moved here, raised a family. It's been amazing. I love this place. So you guys are doing great work. So where does your story of getting into local government kind of start?
So I like to tell everybody that most people fall into local government. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be a county manager when I grow up.
Oh, you didn't have those dreams as a kid?
Did not. But what I knew from as early as I thought about working, I knew I wanted to serve. And local government is it's where the servants come, really. So it is all about public service. So that's really where my story starts. Had a huge heart for service. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Kind of bounced around a little bit, as most people do. And then thankfully, I crossed paths with local government. So I'm born and raised in Rhode Island. So I also am a transplant.
Let's go.
Yeah. I claim my Yankee roots because you can take the girl out of New England, but you can't take the New England out of the girl.
I say that all the time, 100%. And people will let you know out here if they don't like the Yankees. There's a stigma out here with Yankees, and it's like, man, we just love this place. Let's just love this place together.
What I tell people is, listen, I'm from somewhere else, and I've chosen to be here.
Exactly.
Because you all had it right, and so you're stuck with me.
Whether you like it or not.
That's right. Yep. So I went to school in upstate New York. Hamilton College is the name of the college.
Okay.
Studied philosophy and anthropology. You don't do much with that except go back to grad school.
Wait, hold on. If we can go back for a second. Philosophy, anthropology.
Yep.
Was there a different career that you potentially were thinking at that point?
Refugee resettlement.
For me and for all the people watching, more so for the people watching, what is that?
So I was really focused on communities with refugees, like exile communities. I thought it was, when I was in college, I actually studied abroad. I studied in India, Nepal, and Tibet. And I lived in a Tibetan refugee settlement with a refugee family. Wow. As my study abroad. So when I came back to the States, I was intrigued by the notion of people without a country. And the heart for service kicked in, and I thought, what I want to do is help people in that situation find their homes, right? Like make a home and create community.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it seems like community is a big part of the story, especially once you get into local government.
That's right.
When did that change? Like obviously you had the heart for people, but when did that kind of go? maybe I need to take a different approach with the career?
Well, so pragmatically, I graduated from Hamilton College, and then I moved to Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was a waitress, and it's a great profession, and I just kept thinking, I'm going to find a way to bring my training into my job.
Yeah.
Refugee resettlement's a pretty narrow thing, right? So I started looking at nonprofits.
Okay.
And actually, being frank, struggled to find work. And so I had a person take a chance on me. My first professional role was with Charleston County School District. I worked 20 hours a week doing grant evaluation, and 20 hours a week I drove out to a rural middle school in McClellanville, South Carolina, where I was a recreation instructor. So I was like the gym teacher and a grant evaluator, yeah. And so that was where I realized refugee resettlement is narrow, but the world of nonprofit is broad. So I got interested in nonprofit administration and management.
Yeah.
Decided to go back to school. So I went to Arizona State in Tempe, Arizona to get, I say the other ASU, right?
Is that not the online one that you actually moved there and went there?
I moved there and went there. Yep. So I lived in Phoenix for 2 years during grad school. Studied nonprofit management and administration, but I didn't want to be narrow because I already learned through my interest in refugee resettlement that you got to find a career at the end of the day. So nonprofit management, public administration as a broad backdrop, and that was really when I graduated with my MPA, I ended up getting a local government management fellowship.
Wow.
Through our professional association, which took me to Sarasota County, Florida. So from Phoenix, I moved to Sarasota, Florida to go work for county government there, and the rest is history.
So genuinely fell into it. Like, and real quick, if we could backtrack, the nonprofit world, I think, is so vast. And you don't realize, like, I was talking to somebody in nonprofit probably like 2 months ago at this point. Every nonprofit touches people differently. So there's like so many nonprofits out there that you wouldn't even like understand how many nonprofits do certain things. And I think it's for people who are looking for a career in it. Is there any advice to someone who's maybe like dead set on the nonprofit world?
Yeah, well, so it's funny because that was me. I was dead set on the nonprofit world, and I actually had an advisor who steered me from nonprofits to local government. And what she said was, there are so many nonprofits in the world. You are a systems thinker, and you're going to get frustrated by the narrowly constructed missions of nonprofits. Yeah. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, if you work for a food bank, is it going to satisfy you professionally for the rest of your days to give people food?
Yeah.
Or at a certain point, are you going to want to work on the root cause as to why people are struggling to feed themselves in the first place? And I was like, the second. So she said, don't go nonprofit, go local government, because we're the ones working to knit the systems together. Nonprofit's a critical, essential partner in that. Yeah. But the core services of county government, local government, not necessarily just county, maybe align with your systems thinking better than a different nonprofit role. Yeah,
because I think it's super vast, but there's also only so many nonprofits that can be like a Make-A-Wish, that can be like the oh my gosh, I just had it and I just lost it for breast cancer. What is it called?
Komen.
There's only
Susan
so many.
Komen, yeah.
Susan Komen. There's only so many that can be that massive, right? So like, yes, all the nonprofits that are these small in the community nonprofits, they do amazing work. They help the community so much. But there can only be so many jobs that pay a livable wage. And like you said, really get to the problem or at least have a major impact on the root causes of it. So then get into local government. So real quick, born and raised in Rhode Island, went to school in New York, Charleston, South Carolina, Phoenix, Arizona. I say Phoenix. I don't feel like anybody knows a lot of cities outside of Phoenix and Arizona. No disrespect to Arizona. Sarasota, Hickory, North Carolina. Do you just go all in for everything you do?
So I'm a gypsy. But what I would say is I have not been able to roll on from Catawba County. So what's that say? Right? I mean, there's something about this place that captured me. So here I am. Yeah.
What is a gypsy?
Gypsies, they move about. You know, my mom used to call me her little gypsy. She'd say, "You're just moving. You're always on to the next thing."
Yeah.
And the world is big, and it's exciting to explore it. And so I was always open to possibility, and always just wanted to see what else is out there.
Because I feel like for a lot of people too, hey, I'm gonna go to school. A lot of people would be like, okay, well, I can stay here at this place that I'm at and find an online school, or I can do this and maybe go to a community college that's down the road. But for you to literally go and move majority across the country, I mean, that's a far stretch. You know what I'm saying? You're basically all the way on the West Coast. So like, I feel like for you to go all in on something that you were so passionate about, not a lot of people have the courage to do that. Like, were you always like that? Yeah. I've always had a wandering spirit. Really? As I feel like for a lot of people, it's just not, like they would go the easier route. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a community college down the road. I could just get similar, the same degree, and then work my way up. I just feel like it's just like such an interesting view on life.
Wanderlust is the way I've heard it described. So I have wanderlust, and I love to experience new.
Yeah.
But the truth is, local government hooked me because you can experience new in so many different ways without picking up and moving across the country. So that's really where I think the variety and the importance of a role where you're building community was able to finally curb some of the wanderlust, because you can't make a lasting impact in a community if you're bouncing from place to place. So what's more important, seeing the world or making a difference?
Ooh, that's the quote of the day. I think also in local government too, you have like this, I'm a big analytics guy, huge sports fan, so like numbers have always just made sense to me. I feel like also in local government, like you can statistically see the impact that you're making. Whereas in nonprofit, you'll hear people talk about it. You know, donations will come in and numbers will go up, but they'll go up more slowly. But when you're talking, you're employed 1,200 people. How much big was the budget?
38 million.
Oh my god! Like you're talking about like affecting lives on a daily basis, right? And you're in charge of the entire county at this point. Like I feel like local government, there's more analytical like problems that you can fix. Like, hey, we need to be at whatever it is. We need to be at 10,000. Right now we're at 8. How do we get there? And then the next year, boom, we're at 12,000 now. Whatever that is. I'm just giving a broad example. Like, do you think that's part of the reason that you're kind of more like you're settling into it?
I mean, I'm a data girl too, and a sports person. So I would say a couple things. So first off, the team is good because it's a team. So the broad functions of county government, you know, you said, well, you're in charge of all that. Well, yeah, I am, with a lot of help from all my friends.
Yeah.
We have a very, very competent group of department heads and managers in the organization, and they're just very capable of running their stuff. And because we are a data-oriented organization, to your point, you know, it's easy to chart strategies that end up being measurable, but there's more to it than that. I think local government management is part art, part science. You've talked about the science part, and there's an art part that's really important too, helping a community gel around a vision. You know, that's not something that you can read in a textbook. You've got to just go in and have those discussions and connect with people to figure out what matters, and to overlay that against how is this community structured, how are we functioning, what resources do we have. And so if that's where we want to go, if that vision is compelling, then how are we going to get there? That's actually where the action is, and I think that's the most stimulating part.
I think it's incredible. I think local government does not get the credit it deserves. Obviously, it's like, there's all these problems and this and that. It's like, nobody knows what goes on behind the scenes and the hours that are put in and how much resources are needed to make things move. So talk about your time in Sarasota. How big was the county, and kind of like, how was that experience for you professionally?
So that was a phenomenal experience. The association threw whom I got the fellowship, International City County Managers Association. So city and county managers from across the country, but really across the world. So there's a community in every place, right? There is also a local government in every place. So I got this fellowship through ICMA, and I was embedded in Sarasota County, which is, at the time, I was there from 04 to 11. They had 5,000 employees. When I left, the budget had just cracked the $1 billion threshold. So it's a very large community. The population of the community was around 380,000 on the Gulf Coast of Florida. So a pretty booming community. Yeah,
Wow.
it was big. And
Go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
I was going to say I learned there. I was embedded in the county manager's office, and I rotated through every department in county operations. So that was where I cut my teeth, and I say I got the bird's eye view. I learned about all of the operational functions that county government did, but what was most important is I learned about it through the manager's eyes, not through a departmental line staff. And why that's important is because I never came in and said Public Works is more important than Parks and Rec, is more important than social services, because the manager owns it all.
Yeah.
I call that stewardship of the whole. You got to own the whole thing. The parts can't be more or less important if you're pursuing a community vision. You've got to figure out how to make it all work. I don't get to say I don't care about that function at the expense of these other functions that are more important, right?
How much did your perspective change about local government when you got into local government?
You know, I think it made sense to me. I'd always felt called to serve. And, you know, you mentioned the fact that local government doesn't get a ton of credit. I think that was also part of what was enticing to me. When it's running well, you don't even know that it's there.
Yeah.
And by design, right? Like you turn on the water and you turn on the tap and water comes out. You get in your car to drive down the road, the lights, in theory, are functioning, right?
The road,
You know? And so those are things that are happening beyond us, and that's when local government's working at its best, is when you're not even thinking about it.
I think one of the cool things, and you talked, when I'm a chamber ambassador, you talked about this at the chamber meeting, is how much goes into local government. I don't think people realize that. Real quick, and we're going to talk about Catawba County here in a couple minutes. I have a couple more questions before we do that. In a town like, in a place like Sarasota, and that many people, is the local government that involved, like as it is here in Catawba?
Yeah, it's a pretty involved, engaged community. There's neighborhood associations and advisory boards and all those different things, and partnerships between the local government and the community. So in Sarasota County, there's a lot of public improvement districts where citizens want lights, say street lights, beyond the standard. Fine, but you pay for them. And so they'd petition the local government, say this is what we want. If it met technical, then the local government installed those things. And so tons of community engagement, and that's how that it needs to be. I mean, you think about the Gulf Coast of Florida and you think about storms, hurricanes, huge aspect of community engagement and post-storm response in areas where that stuff happens all the time.
Look now, with all the stuff that you've done, like I said, we're going to talk about Catawba County here in a minute. Could you see yourself doing anything else?
No. Once the people who get bit by the local government bug, it sort of becomes a joke and say, well, I don't know what else I would do with myself. But the thing about it is it matters so much on a day-to-day basis. There is never an opportunity to get bored because the challenges just keep morphing. You know, you learn all about, like, when I first started, I learned all about solar farms when there was a boom in solar farm development. Deep dive into that. It was like a unit, right? Like thinking back to the days of school, it was like a deep dive unit on solar. Learned all about that. The boom sort of subsides. Next issue. Interbasin transfers. Didn't know anything about that. And I'm just picking issues. There's always an issue coming that's new to you. you understand the structure and the function, but the content is so fresh that it's really, really stimulating. And I tell everybody, I don't know what matters more than building strong communities. So for me, I've got 2 boys who live here in this community, and I tell people I'm the lucky lady who gets to jump out of bed every day and work to make this place better for my kids. What's more motivating than that?
So you have 2 sons?
Yes.
How old are they, if you don't mind me
They're
asking?
10 and 12. I got
Wow.
both in the Mountain View area, so 4th grade and 6th grade. I'm going into 5th and 7th.
What I know you talked about not really settling down and kind of always being on the move. How did raising a family change your perspective on life?
I mean, like most people, right? You think about what do you want for your kids. And so being in a profession where you live where you work. So, I live in Catawba County, knowing that my family is affected by that package. You want to make sure that you make a smart choice. So my kids are in 4th and 6th grade, and I'll tell anybody, I hope to be here until they're out of school at least. I hope to be here serving this community really for as long as they'll have me, but at a minimum so I can get my kids out of school. Because you want to ensure that you're not disrupting their education, and at the same time, I'm pouring everything every day into making sure they have the best opportunities.
I think it's pretty cool, like especially in a job like that where you can affect change, and being that your family is in that community. And there's like the cliche thing. So one thing you don't know about me, I used to be a firefighter, and they always say there's an expression in the fire service: act as if it's your family.
Yeah.
The problem is that when it is your family, you're, oh my God, you're freaking out because this is the worst day ever. But in your case, it's not like that. It is, you genuinely have the ability to be like, I'm not just doing this for my family, but for every family to thrive. And it helps that your family lives in the community.
That's right.
Because now you get to be like, this is my why.
Sure.
So getting into local government, what is your why? What is that thing that just literally keeps you going every single day?
I think the challenges are hard, and the approach for moving forward is going to require people who have the right intentions. And so it's easy to check that box and say, I have pure intentions and I really want what's best for the community.
Yeah.
That my biggest why is because I don't think anything else matters. What matters the most in people's lives is their daily existence, from when you wake up in the morning and you put your feet on the floor getting out of bed till when you climb back in that bed at night. Where's that happen?
Yeah.
That happens in local government land, right? Yeah.
So one thing that we've talked about is partners. I see a ring. You're married. What does your husband do? Talk a little bit about your husband, if you don't mind.
Sure. So my husband's a veterinarian in town. Yep. He is
That's awesome.
Mountain View Animal Hospital is where he works.
That's so awesome.
So, yep. And we joke, we have a lot of folks who will go into the clinic and he'll say, do you know, with a last name like Furtado, there's not a lot of us around. And so they'll walk in and say, do you know, before they finish, now he says, yes, and don't blame me for anything she has done, and don't blame her for anything I might do. And so we joke that we have this nice little thing where people see both of us in different contexts. And so it takes them a minute to make the connection, but last name's a dead giveaway.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think, so one thing that we usually talk to people is how supportive spouses are and how crucial it is to have a spouse that supports not only what you do, and just have like a really good relationship. How impactful has it been with your husband? How impactful has it been having your spouse on your side and everything you do in the community?
I mean, it's super important. When you go downtown and you're, for example, watching music under the sails, and you have people come up to you to talk about a work matter, So there's the smile typically, and then after 10 minutes, there's the, do you need help look? And then, and sometimes you need help and sometimes you don't. And my husband's really good at well, do you want to talk about it? And sometimes I say, no, I don't. And he knows that is also being a good spouse, just saying, okay, well, then we're going to keep moving. Yeah.
That's so awesome. Is there ever a point, because it seems like you both have very involved careers, is there ever a point where you have to choose work over family?
Yes, in the moment, but in the macro level, no. right? So I think one thing that I would say is that I am very cognizant of putting my time where my priorities are. And so, you know, an example, 2-3 weeks ago, we had all-day budget workshops it was a Wednesday, and they were from 8 to 5. And that just so happened to be the same day that both my kids had their award celebrations at work or at school. And so there's no way I can go. I've got workshops from 8 to 5. My husband went, and I had a friend who said, if your husband can't go, I'll go. And so I got pictures real time like I was there. And I also said to my kids, I can't be at everything, but you know, if I'm not at everything, it doesn't mean that I love you any less when I'm not at the one thing I can't go to. So we talk about it. You know, they know I'm late every other Monday night. We talk on a Sunday, we talk about the week and when I'm going to see them and when I'm not. And I try to make sure I'm not missing the most important things. And when I am missing that event, they know that I'm thinking about them. So I feel like it's another way to raise resilient kids. I can't be there every second. You're going to be okay. It doesn't mean mom doesn't love you.
I think communication is such a huge part of life, and you kind of talking about that. In life, how much did you learn about communicating from working in local government and then translating that into motherhood and being a parent? Because communication is everything.
Yeah.
How did you go about that?
I think you learn, you know, as they say, live and learn, right?
Yeah.
You make mistakes, you've botched communications, and then you think to yourself, okay, so next time I'm going to do that differently. I've learned that what I've learned a lot through local government is that you sometimes have to answer the question that no one is explicitly asking, right? And that means you have to be connected and you have to be thinking about, put yourself in another person's shoes.
100%.
We were joking early on about both being from other places. But I'll share that as a local government manager, when I'm in a room and we're talking about land use, how is our community growing? And somebody says, where are you from? There's a question that they're not asking or a statement that they're not making, which is, you weren't born here. You can't have the same perspective I have because I was here first. So what I say is, I'm from Rhode Island. I moved here in 2011. This is where I've chosen to raise my family. I know what you're thinking, and I'm just going to say it, right? So I think communication is feeling the vibe and sometimes saying the thing that needs to be said that the people talking don't necessarily have the courage to put up on the table in a non-confrontational and tactful way.
No, 100%. It's so funny that I've had many of those conversations where it's like, what do you know? You're just a Yankee. I'm like, I mean, I know life. I mean, just because we're born and raised and live in different places doesn't mean we don't have experiences in life. Doesn't just mean that automatically everything shuts off. And the minute I move down here, I'm like a blank canvas and I don't know anything, right? You still have your experience and your culture and everything that you had up there or wherever you're from, you bring it with you, right? Everybody has that. Like you said, you studied abroad. You have all those experiences with you. You went to all these different places. You bring that with you. And it's not a bad thing. If anything, it's a good thing because you bring multiple perspectives instead of just, I've lived here my whole life. This is how we do it. And it's the only way we're going to do it, right? So jumping into Catawba County, and you were just talking about the growth of Catawba County, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Like you said, my favorite quote you said at that meeting, if you're not growing, you're dying.
That's right. So
real quick, before we get into like the thick of Catawba County, why that mindset, and has that always been your mindset?
It has not always been my mindset. I think to your point about having broad experiences, you grow and you learn through exposure that things are not as simple. So the mindset of if a community that's not growing is dying is so important because for a long time, Catawba County was losing population. So if we rewind the clock to the 2010, around 2010, 2011, 2012, right on after the economic downturn of the early 2000s, Catawba County was losing population in the working age range, 20 to 44, faster than every other metropolitan statistical area in the state.
Wow.
and we were losing jobs faster than every MSA in the state. And I like to say those are not two things you want to lead the pack in losing.
Yeah.
And so that caused us to really, it's a wake-up call. Being
100%.
from up north, when you see these communities that have had industrial flight as the economy has changed and factories have shut down and things like that have happened, we didn't want to be on that same track where we lost population. So jobs were closing and people were leaving, and that started to reinforce, those two factors started to reinforce each other.
Yeah.
And
This was, sorry to interrupt, this
No,
was
no.
when all the manufacturing had left,
Yeah.
right? That was a big
Yeah.
push of that, or correct?
Yep. So it happened in the late 90s, happened again in the early 2000s. We had an economy that was struggling based on national, global macroeconomic trends. And so we were losing population, and it got people thinking about what factors cause someone to want to be in a community. You can find a job that you can support your loved ones, and your quality of life isn't terrible.
Yeah.
So can I find a job that pays my bills, and am I miserable when I'm not working? Right? So like answering those questions is the work of local government. And what for us, as we lost population, answering those questions became the driver for how can we cause our population to grow? What do we need? We need people to want to be here, and we need solid employment opportunities for them to support themselves. That became the foundation of the county commissioner's strategic plan. But it's not just Catawba County alone in that.
Yeah.
All of our local governments, there are 8 municipalities, 8 cities and towns within Catawba County. We were having this discussion as a community. And so that was the community call to action. It wasn't just a Catawba County government call to action. That was everyone in Catawba County who cares about our future. This is where we need to go, because losing population is not going to sustain us.
I think Catawba County as a whole, it's home for me. Me and my wife just had our first kid, so this is where I'm raising my family. For someone who's never been to Catawba County, for someone who maybe lives in Catawba County but doesn't really know kind of all the ins and outs, can you talk a little bit about what Catawba County from the local government side is and what you guys do for people who may not know?
Yep. So local governments, county governments in North Carolina are all structured the same. So there's an elected county sheriff and an elected register of deeds. We have both of those here in Catawba County. So those are elected officials who are essentially equal to the Board of County Commissioners. There's five-member governing board. The county commissioners have budgetary authority over the sheriff and the register of deeds, but beyond that, they're equal. And so those are functions that are within the purview of county government. Let's sort of take it from the top. There's, fire. So we talked about partnerships. Catawba County is responsible for fire protection services in the unincorporated county, as I talked to old firemen. We contract with 14 fire departments to provide those services countywide. EMS is a countywide function. We provide EMS services. Countywide emergency management, 911. So we've got 911 telecommunicators answering the phones when something bad in your life is happening. County social services for benefit administration, for child protective services, adult protective services. Public health department. We watched COVID. Public health was on the front line of that. County public health departments were on the front line of that in terms of vaccine administration, contact tracing. What else? Counties fund public education. This is super important here in Catawba County. So about 40 cents on every local dollar that the county takes in goes to support public education. As you know, we've got 3 public school systems and the community college, Catawba Valley Community College. And so those county government provides operating support as well as being responsible for building facilities for the education system. Let's see, building services. So when you get a building permit, health inspections when you eat in a restaurant and you see the little scorecard sitting behind the cash register that says this restaurant was a 99. That's environmental health, which is a county function. It's actually a state function that's county administered. Swimming pools and lodging, well and septic. I'm trying to think. So that's public health. We run a landfill. So when the garbage truck comes by your house and, empties into the back of the truck, where does it go? It goes to the county landfill. We've got libraries, countywide libraries. We have libraries in Sherrilsford, in Hickory, Claremont, Conover, Maiden. I feel like there's, Southwest Branch in Mountain View, 6 county libraries. Parks, we have 4 county parks, Baker's Mountain Park, Riverbend Park, and Mountain Creek Park, very large, modeled after the state passive park system. And then we got a pocket park in St. Stephen's, which is tucked away behind Clyde Campbell Elementary. Let's see, cooperative extension. So your 4-H, your agricultural education, serve safe training for food safety, row crop, livestock advisement.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And you have to, obviously you're not like, obviously you're over everything, but you're not like the person for each thing.
Right.
How hard is it to kind of, especially when you first get into it, how hard was it to kind of learn a little bit of everything so that way you're able to go out and educate and talk about it when people are bringing up those concerns to you like you were talking about?
So it's hard, and it's also hard to make sure you train yourself to never stop updating those perspectives. So like I started working in county government in 2004.
Oh, wow.
Things have changed since 2004.
Yeah.
So if I think that, you know exactly how a library operates because you saw the libraries in 2004, shame on me because things change.
100%.
So it's super important for me to stay current in the knowledge of our county departments. And so we go out with them. Every now and again, I'm like, I want to go out and participate in environmental health fieldwork. I want to understand how my staff is going about working with citizens to get septic installed. That's a complicated thing. I want to understand how that process works. I want to understand what our citizens experience in that. And those are things that you don't do unless you just take the time to spend with staff and stay familiar.
How much of an all-in career is local government, especially like county-wide?
I think people can come and go. So you can come in and out of, so that we work with private sector. There's lots of private sector opportunity depending upon your focus. Like infrastructure construction, right? There's lots of private consulting companies that do engineering and planning work. We work with those people all day long as they shepherd development proposals through on behalf of property owners. So if the work is interesting to you, there's lots of different ways you can plug into the work. But my biased perspective is that only from within the local government can you see the total picture and feel like you own the outcome of the total picture. Yeah.
It's an interesting perspective. I like that. Is it like day to day, right? Like, what exactly are you doing? Like, I feel like, again, the conversations that people come up to you and talk, it's like you have to end world hunger. Like, this is your responsibility. But, like, day to day, like, what does that look like?
So for us, the biggest thing on a day-to-day basis is Board of Commissioner action is where policy meets, like where the rubber meets the road. So June 2nd, so a week ago, Monday night, the county commissioners adopted the annual operating budget. So the 338,129 employees that we talked about, the only reason that's real is because the board took a vote and voted to adopt that budget. That's where we get our permission, really. So everything starts with the Board of Commissioners. And so our board meetings where they take formal action on things is moving strategy forward in tangible ways. Yeah. So today, for example, prior to coming here, I had Board of Commissioners subcommittee. That's an agenda that's publicly published. This morning we talked about disposing of a piece of property that the county owns that someone wants to purchase. We talked about 2 neighborhoods that petitioned the county to help with enhancing the road that was degrading in front of the houses. We talked about the jail medical plan. There's a statutory requirement for the board to approve the jail medical plan to ensure that the administration of a medical program in the county detention facility meets statutory responsibility for us taking care of the inmates to a certain standard. So that's just an example, but board subcommittee is a big deal. The budget is a huge deal.
Yeah.
Working with the commission on a strategic plan. So I mentioned population growth and job growth. So we've got strategies. We have a strategic plan with 5 focus areas, and in each focus area, we've got strategies that we're driving. We've got projects, right? So economic development, we've got a partnership with the city of Hickory called Trivium Corporate Center, where we're co-developing essentially a business park. Doing the same thing in partnership with Claremont at the Claremont International Rail Park. 2 huge pieces of work regarding economic development that I might have a project meeting with partners from the cities, engineers, and staff support about, okay, you're talking about installing the water line. Where are you with that? What's the status? Where do you need to be going? Everything we do is driving the board strategic plan, and it can't happen unless it gets legs through the budget process. So it's really trying to figure out where are we going and do we need resources in order to do that, and when we need resources, we're making sure we're moving that forward expeditiously, you know.
Does that, when you put the budget out, where does that money come from? Is that from the federal government, or is it from the state government, or
Taxes. So,
so
right,
you guys
property
get a certain
taxes.
amount of money from taxes.
Yep.
That then.
That's right.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money from taxes.
Yeah, well, it's all. So, I mean, you get some from federal and state government, and then you get some from sales tax. Okay, so every time somebody goes out and, gas is a bad example. So every time somebody goes to the supermarket, they're paying taxes on that. Sales tax.
Yeah.
That sales tax revenue comes to the county.
There's a phone ringing.
I know.
Not my phone.
Property tax revenue as well. Catawba County has the 8th lowest property tax rate in the state. The board sets a property tax rate that generates a certain amount of tax revenue from people's real estate. But certain functions of government are totally fee supported. So the landfill, no sales tax or property tax dollars goes to support the landfill. All of the revenue from the landfill is generated by the customers of the landfill. Okay.
Wow.
So
I didn't
yeah.
know, and again, a little ignorant here as far as knowing politics and government and stuff like that. I didn't know that like sales tax was stuff like I thought that was just like I just thought that was like these are like things that nobody talks about, but like so it goes to the county of wherever you're purchasing. That's money for the county.
It's a little more complicated than that, but yes, some of the money from sales tax goes to the state. They take it right off the top, and then they distribute to the county. As part of it's population based on how many people live in a community, and part of it is what they call point of sale based. So the car dealerships along State Road 70, they generate point of sales tax for Catawba County and our local governments in a way that we really benefit from. So Catawba County being a regional shopping destination in terms of our neighbors from Caldwell, Alexander, Burke wanting to come here to spend their money essentially manifest in higher sales tax collections for Catawba County than for some of the places that those citizens came from.
That's incredible. So Walmart is a big deal.
That's right.
Walmart just became even bigger.
Yeah,
and not only you got one, you got 2.
That's right.
Well, I mean, 1, 2, 3. There's 3 in Catawba County. That's crazy. Again, did not know any of that. That makes you look at purchases so different.
That's right.
Like where you're spending your money is going back into that community.
right.
Obviously, it's a small portion, the taxes,
Buy your cars in Catawba County.
That's gonna be on every dealership's thing. Is just gonna be buy your cars in Catawba County.
Right.
Okay,
That's right.
So is that the biggest form of revenue? I'm sorry, from the tax perspective, is cars, because it's just the biggest purchase you can make.
Property taxes so property tax is the biggest local component of Catawba County's budget, and I apologize for not having the stat right off the top of my head on that.
You're good.
But it's property tax and sales tax are the two most important local government revenue sources.
Wow. Yep. That makes me look at spending so differently. Is that everywhere, or is that just like a North Carolina thing? That's like every state, city, county?
Yeah, in general, like, so not to go into these weeds, but like New Hampshire doesn't have property tax at all. Okay, they have a higher sales tax. The tax structure of every state is
just
different.
Yeah.
Certain states have lower sales tax. They have lower property tax. It all depends, but North Carolina, the two most important local government revenues are property tax and sales tax.
That's crazy. Shop local, shop Catawba County.
That's
period.
right.
Anyway,
that's right.
What has been your favorite part of this job?
I think it's seeing the impact, right? So there are moments where I think this is the local government Super Bowl. It's what we train for.
Yeah.
And so I have like a couple. So one, COVID. What I told people during the COVID pandemic is this is local government's time to shine. Not all local governments are created equally. Catawba County is a great local government. Y'all have come to a good one, so you got lucky and landed in a great place. And, the COVID response was our public health team connecting with both of our local hospitals to do what's right by the citizens of Catawba County. And, politics aside, whatever your thinking is around that was public servants stepping forward and saying, we're going to manage this pandemic locally.
Yeah.
A couple days after Hurricane Helene, when our neighbors to the west were still decimated with the impacts of that storm, that's local government's time to shine. Many folks don't realize that the Burke County 911 Center was down, and Catawba County administered 911 calls for Burke County while their system was down, while they were working on getting that restored. That's local government time to shine. There were the less intense moments. So we were standing, we opened Mountain Creek Park down in Sherrills Ford. That park opened in, say, 2020, maybe 2021, 22, something thereabouts. When we were standing at the ribbon cutting, it was a Saturday afternoon. The playground was jamming. There were kids just running and screaming everywhere. And there were these elected officials and department heads and people who spent a lot of time and energy opening this park, standing there behind microphones, behind podiums. And they were talking, but you couldn't hear a word they were saying for the kids screaming with joy in the background. And I remember thinking to myself, this is what local government's all about. You can't even hear the talking heads for the kids enjoying themselves in their community in the background. Like, those are the moments that, like, this is why we do the work we do. Sitting downtown on Friday night underneath the sails, that's the city of Hickory, that's not Catawba County, but I sat there and thought to myself, this is a community that is investing in sense of place, that cares about its future. Like, that is a local government win right there. So shout out to Hickory for having the foresight to do that.
So you mentioned a couple things that I want to talk about. Helene was, by all stretch of the imagination, devastating for a lot of communities. Luckily, Catawba County, for the most part, was pretty. I mean, I lost internet for 3 days, thought the world was over. Not to make a joke about it, but genuinely, like, the lights flickered. We lost internet for 3 days. There are people who lost their entire home. There are people who unfortunately passed away. It was devastating. and a number of the communities that surround us. For Catawba County specifically, how when you say that's our time to shine, but I know you mentioned the Burke stuff, but was there anything that you guys were doing to help, Asheville, Boone, like all these surrounding communities that are a rock's throw away?
Yeah, and so I'm going to sort of answer on behalf of the local government coalition in Catawba County, because really and truly we all pulled together. So one night about 10:30, an email went out on a listserv looking for 500 feet of 18-inch iron pipe for Black Mountain. So 500 feet of pipe of that size, that's pretty big. And so nobody in Catawba County had that alone, but we start coordinating among the managers. That was probably 10:30 on a, one night. The next morning, we got it. So the local governments in Catawba County pooled the little bits and pieces of pipe. They had to come up with 500 feet of pipe that we shipped up the mountain to Black Mountain to get them back up. Our sheriff's department deployed to Buncombe County for a while. You think about running a detention facility when you don't have power. How do you do that? You call in help from your friends. So sheriff's office deployed to support the Asheville County Sheriff's Office in essentially continuing to operate a detention facility. We deployed support to Yancey County and Mitchell County. There were counties that benefited. We sent disaster assessment teams, building services folks, tax folks to go up and help canvass the community to just figure out what had been lost and how to organize around rebuilding for that.
Yeah.
We had assistance given through social services for benefit recertification for all these people who lost everything. There's still a process to screen them for benefit eligibility, and how do you do that when everybody in your community needs your help at the same time? You call your friends and neighbors, and we come bearing help. Yeah. So lots of ways, and I could, probably if I thought about it more, I could go on and on.
So you said you lived here since 2011. Is that the most devastating thing you've seen in the impact in this area?
Yeah, probably. I mean, nothing like that, and thankfully it didn't affect us directly, but that was an impactful, unprecedented is the word, yeah.
Unbelievable. Just something nobody saw coming. Insurance, the whole nine, everybody. But and what a way they bounced back. I mean, Chimney Rock just opened. Like, they're really starting to open everything up there, and it's just beautiful to see. So anyone watching from Western North Carolina, we're thinking of you. So excited that the community's back and stronger than ever. Last couple questions for you. I know I asked you your favorite thing. What's been your least favorite thing of your job? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah. Least favorite thing of the job. Well, I know it sounds funny. For me, it's been very few and far between, but it's hard, I think, as local government staff to defend ourselves, right? And so people get upset because things don't always go as planned. And so it's hard for me when there's a situation that, despite my best efforts, I know I am never going to settle that. I'm never going to resolve it in a way that citizen is satisfied with. So there's some element of wanting people to know that, contrary to what you might believe, local government officials don't jump out of bed and design ways to make people's lives miserable. We don't relish in being a bureaucrat. We don't love telling people no. Yeah. And so I think I've been blessed in that in this community, there's a long-standing tradition of strong local government. So I don't think it's as frequent, but I do think there are people who just hate local government. They hate government. And so for me, it's always unfortunate when I find these situations where I'm like, there's nothing there's nothing that I can do to satisfy this particular situation and make it better. It's when you realize this person is just going to curse Catawba County for the rest of his or her days. Those are hard because you kind of want to be like, I just want to make that right, but I've learned over time that you just can't, and on to the next thing, because there's going to be something coming next.
I feel like in local government specifically, you can't be or attempt to be a people pleaser, because nobody is ever happy, or everybody. And I've learned this being a small business owner. Everybody wants to give you their 2 cents. Like, I think you should do this. This will turn everything around. And it's like, it's not like that. But thanks for your input. Do you get a lot of those, or people just offering you advice unsolicited or unwarranted?
You do. And what I would say is, I always find it's always important to listen.
Yeah.
And it's always, I try to gauge how much does this person want to have a conversation and a dialogue, or how much are they just trying to stick it to the man, right? Like, because you can tell. I mean, sometimes I got an email last week. This is a real example. So there was a small article in the Hickory Record about Catawba County's opioid settlement dollars and what are we spending them on.
Yeah.
And so this article laid out, this is, the 5 or 6 programs. And I got an email from a citizen saying, you need to be spending more funds on relapse prevention. And I was like, relapse prevention programs are great. That's not where we found the gap in our community. So here's why I've invested in specialized ambulance unit, in school-based behavioral health. And as you continue to see gaps in the community, let's keep this dialogue going. That was perfect, because I had an exchange with a citizen who offered her opinion when I offered more information and a little bit of a different perspective. It was, well, I never thought about it that way. Yeah. And I was like, but please, let's keep this line of communication open, because we do not have the answers and are very interested in hearing what you have to say. That to me is like the perfect, someone offered a perspective, I offered a counter perspective. We ended agreeing that we had both learned something from the exchange and keeping that possibility for future dialogue on the table.
Yeah, I think in such a tough, that's a hard situation. A lot of people have been affected by it, or know somebody indirectly that are affected by it. But just like you said, knowing that you guys don't always have the answers. But I think that's the thing about local government is you see the problem. You come together, you figure out this is potentially a solution, figure out that a majority of it worked, but there's still some that's off. Now you bring it back to the drawing board. Is it literally just kind of a rinse and repeat type of thing where hey, we got this much better, but we still need to improve, and then you have a plan in place, strategize, place the plan, and make it happen?
Yeah, I think these days, I think it's about adaptability, and it's about being aware situationally. So sometimes solutions don't get implemented because the timing wasn't right? So maybe it's a perfect solution, but there was just something in the community that wasn't ready yet. Yeah. That's one thing. Sometimes the solution is a choice between equally flawed options. Right? Like when you're like, I got to do something, and there were 3 options and none of them are good. I mean, when you're faced, which is the least bad option? I mean, that's a real thing. And people say, oh my gosh, you guys don't know what you're doing. I'm like, no, we do. We realize that there are 3 terrible choices. But
we got to pick one.
We have to do something, because inaction isn't an option.
100%. Last 2 questions for you. Knowing everything you know now in local government, what would you tell your younger self? Like high school, fresh out of college you. What's that conversation look like now?
I would tell her to not lose the fire for making things better. Because I think, people say you get jaded. Well, you do, but the truth of the matter is we still have the ability, we still have agency, we still have the ability to make a positive difference. And the other thing I'd say is, if not you, then who? And I know that sounds super cheesy, but people in, all across the world are making decisions. They're just like us. The people who make decisions, national decisions, international, like all these different levels of super complicated stuff. The people who are making the decisions are just like you, and they're just like me. They're just sitting in a different seat with a different role. So for me, it's don't lose your fire to make things better, and realize that if you're not doing it, who is?
I know I said last two, but now finally last two. We have so many amazing small businesses in this community. Mm-hmm. How awesome is it to be at the front and center of the community of just all these incredible stories of these incredible people, of these incredible businesses, and like people genuinely just being in this community has changed my entire life. Yeah. I don't know if I'd be the person I am today and doing this, if I wasn't living here. Mm-hmm. Can you talk just about how incredible this community is? And then I promise there's only one other question after that.
Yeah, this is a special place. I mean, it's really some of the things we talk about, collaboration being a tide that lifts all ships. And that is absolutely the case. We don't always agree. But compared to a lot of communities, we work very, very well together. We can get all our elected and appointed officials in the room, and we don't have Jerry Springer fights busting out.
Although it would make great content. No.
It probably would make great content, but from a local government standpoint, we strive for nice and boring. Because honestly, that's good public policy.
100%.
And so I think Catawba County is a super welcoming place. When I moved here, I was trying to figure out when the newness was going to wear off and when people were going to start treating me the way they really felt. And here I am all these years later, and they're still super nice and super sweet. And maybe they bless my heart when I'm turning and walking back to the car. I don't know. But yeah, we have benefited, and we've had leadership longevity in the sense that our electeds have not been special cause electeds. I think we've been blessed by collective community leadership where it's bigger than any one of them. And I think that right there is part of our recipe for success.
I think it's incredible. Truly, I love this place. I couldn't think of living in a better community. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I would not been able to do any of this living where I lived in New York, and I was working 2-3 jobs, and it was crazy. I wouldn't have had a family. I mean, I was working myself to death, and moving out here has given me the ability to live, and it's been incredible. So I'm beyond grateful for this community. But with that being said, finally, we made it to the last question. For anyone watching right now, what is the best piece of life advice that you can give them?
The only thing we choose 100% of the time is our reaction to what happens to us. So, yeah.
Oh, shoot. Can you elaborate on that real quick?
Sure. So, you know what? Life can be hard or life can be easy. Like, everybody's life experience is going to be different. Mm-hmm. But I believe firmly in being the one to make the choice about how I react to something. I can get out of bed in the morning and say, today's going to be a terrible day. Or, if I catch a red light, the story in my head can be, the world is out to get me today. Or I can sit at the red light and say, I just got a minute to take a breath. That's a gift. I'm going to do that. Like, you create your own frame. And so create a positive frame. Try to spin things in the positive, and you can affect the way you interact with the world through that. Perspective is everything. Now, any other words you want to give out for someone maybe who has never been to Catawba County who wants to move here or something? And any last parting words? Yeah, come check us out. You will love it. You'll hopefully never leave. And shop local. Buy those cars on 70, okay? Yeah, shop local, yeah. Well, lastly, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't, I'm going to put all the links in social media, website, everything. If you want to learn more about Catawba County and why you should live in this incredible place, or why you should just come visit. Maybe you're in North Carolina already and you had never been to Catawba County. Come on out. But until next time, thank you one more time for Mary Furtado. Listen, I'm telling you, I'm literally the substitute teacher on Key and Peele. Awful with names. I butcher them. I would have made an awful teacher. Doing roll call like, I can't say it. But this was another Lifting Love podcast. One more time for Lake Hickory Pub and Marina, where Lake and Life meet. If you haven't, hit that subscribe button. But until next time, most importantly, lift love, crush hate. We out.